welcome to today's BSc Sport and Exercise Medical Sciences Open event. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sophie, and I am currently a final year student at the Sport and Exercise Medical Sciences program here at UCL, and I am your chair for this afternoon. We are hoping this session will address those course-specific questions that you may have and will help you to gain more of an insight into what it really is like to study on our BSc Sport and Exercise Medical Sciences undergraduate program. So this afternoon, our speaker, Flaminia Ronca, will provide us with an introduction to the field of sport and exercise medical sciences, followed by an overview of the structure of the BSc program. There will be a Q&A session and plenty of interactive opportunities for you all to join in throughout today's session. This session is being recorded and will be made available following today's event. We're here to respond to your questions, so please share any of those throughout the session using the Q&A function on Zoom. Now, to introduce our speakers, we have Flaminia Ronca. Flaminia is the program director of the IBSc and BSc courses in sport and exercise medical sciences at the Institute of Sport, Exercise and Health. At UCL, she delivers a unique and innovative program that will produce experienced graduates with practical experience and insight in clinical applications of exercise and physical activity in both clinical and athletic contexts. And Jessie is another final year sport and exercise medical sciences student here at UCL and will be answering your questions about the student experience during the Q&A segment. Thank you all. Now over to you.
Thank you very much, Sophie. So hi, welcome everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. I am going to share my screen and I'll give you a bit of an introduction on what the course is about, what you'll study, how you will study, and some examples of student research and student experience. And Jessie and Sophie, please feel free to interrupt me at any point if there's any input that you want to give on your experiences on the course. And then we will have some time for Q&A afterwards. So I'll try to be as brief as I can and leave space for questions later. Now, can you see my full screen, Sophie? Am I in presentation mode?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So we'll go through an introduction, as I said, student research, program overview. We'll talk a bit about career options as well. So this is a part of the team that will teaching you. We've actually had a couple of new members of staff who have joined us. But as you can see, there's a mix of physiotherapists, sports scientists, and also doctors and clinicians who are not on this slide at the moment. But this is just to show you that you're taught by a diverse team. So you get the perspective from the clinician, so a person who will work with patients and they know what works and what doesn't for different clinical populations and for athletes when they get injured and how do you rehabilitate them. But also you get the perspective from scientists as well. So we're a very diverse team, and that brings a lot of strength to the level of education that you receive. Now, if you're considering UCL, you probably know this already, but we are very proud to be part of one of the top 10 universities in the world. Depending on what field of study you look at and which ranking system you look at, we range between the 1st and the 8th in the world at the moment, which is a very, very exciting place to be. And of course, so this is the Nobel Prize numbers probably needs to be updated, but as of a couple of years ago, we had 29 Nobel Prize winners at UCL, and its history, it was founded in 1826 to provide access to higher education to people from all religions and all social and economic backgrounds and ethnicities, which is something that that England did not quite provide in the 1800s. So it's a very fun place to be, and we are very proud to be a part of it. But if you are on this call, you're thinking about sport and exercise medical sciences, or what we call SEMS. So what exactly is this? So what this degree gives you is it merges two things. You have medical sciences, so you get a very strong foundation in how the body works in health and in disease. You study infection, you study cancer, you study genetics, you study immunity, the gut and the liver and the kidneys, and et cetera, et cetera. So you get an incredibly strong foundation from that perspective, which you wouldn't find on a pure sports science degree. And of course, you also get the sports science on top of that. So how do I train an athlete, or how do I train a sedentary person? What happens when the athlete gets injured, and how do I bring him or her back into training? And you get scientific research underpinning all of this. So it's research-led education. So you learn from the latest scientific developments, which is always very exciting, and you're always up to date on what's out there. So in my experience, a lot of students who consider sports science also think about physiotherapy and sports medicine, and sometimes it's not quite clear what the difference is between all of these. So there is more information about this on our website, and there is a link below that you can copy into your browser. But to give you an overview, if you studied purely sports science in another university, you would focus on performance and on healthy populations. So you would not study injuries, and you would not study clinical populations, okay? If you were interested in injuries and clinical populations and just that, then physiotherapy provides a lot more of that. So physiotherapy teaches how to assess injuries. It teaches how to help heal injuries, but it does not teach how to rehabilitate and strengthen a person who's injured to go back into performance. And physiotherapy does not teach how to design training programs for performance. So the two opposites are sports science is purely on healthy people and how to make them stronger and faster, or help them lose weight, whichever one, or coach them. Whereas physiotherapy does not teach you how to design a strength and conditioning program, but it does teach you all about anatomy and joints and tissues and healing, okay? What our program gives is somewhere that brings those two things together. So this is us in the middle in the green. We do teach you how to work with athletes and how to design a strength and conditioning program. We do teach you how an injury happens and how to rehabilitate it. But remember that it does not make you a physiotherapist. What many of our students do is, after doing our degree, they then do a master's degree in physiotherapy, and then they get the best of both worlds. Sophie or Jessie, is this something you are considering? I know some of your colleagues are going into physiotherapy next year.
Yeah, I've applied for a master's in physiotherapy, and I'm just waiting to make my offer, so get it.
Okay, good. Fingers crossed. So sure you'll get it. So we do have, I think, 3 students from last year's cohort ended up doing masters in physiotherapy. And there's lots of universities that offer that. So those are options. You get the best of both worlds, and you become an accredited physiotherapist, a chartered physiotherapist, if you do that. So research in SEMS, we do, each of our colleagues will have a completely different background. We have colleagues that have a background in physiotherapy and injuries and nutrition and supplementation. My background is in brain sciences, population health, etc., and cardiovascular health. So these are some of our colleagues, but there are more colleagues that have different specialties. So again, you're taught by people that like to focus on specific things and have different expertise. Now, before I give you some examples of what we do as a team, I would like your opinion. Why do we exercise? You can answer this as yourself, or you can answer this as, what do you think people do normally? But why do we exercise? Do you exercise because it's fun? Is it because it makes you feel better? Or you just know that it's good for you and for your health, and so you want to make sure that you are staying healthy and fit and strong? Are you trying to lose weight? These are anonymous, by the way. Is it because you're competitive and you want to beat someone else at your sports, or because you want to be the strongest person in the class? So what drives you? I have not received any responses yet, so I'm waiting for 3 people to respond. There we go. Sorry. Now that should work. So you should see the question in front of you now and some options. Okay, so I can see answers coming in. I'll give it another few seconds. Sophie, why do you exercise while we're waiting for responses to come in?
I actually just signed up for a half marathon in December in Cairo. So I've started exercising a bit more because of that, since I've always really liked running and just started doing a bit of strength and conditioning work at the gym because of a module we went through last year's the strength and conditioning module. And that was actually really informative and very educational because it just made me understand how strong our bodies can be if we train the right way.
Well, congratulations. That's a half marathon in Egypt is incredibly difficult. I bet it's going to be very hot there. So well done. Okay, so I'm going to share the results, and we can see that we've got a response for because it's fun and I enjoy it, and a response for because it makes me feel good. And I'm actually really glad that those are the motivations that we have in today's audience, because that is the best way to make sure that a person continues exercising. If a person's goal is simply to lose weight, for example, then once the goal of losing weight is gone, then most people stop exercising, and that doesn't really become part of their lifestyle. Whereas if we're doing something that we enjoy and then makes us feel good, then it's more what we call sustainable. So we know that the person will continue exercising throughout their life in a form or another. So if we're trying to speak to our parents or our brothers and sisters and they're being lazy and we're telling them you need to exercise because it's good for you, well, the approach to take maybe sometimes is actually, what do you enjoy? Do you enjoy walking? Well, let's find a place where there's a bit of hills so that walking becomes a bit more difficult for you. Okay, so, and I can see that we've got a comment from a guest that you exercise to keep your health in check and it can help with mental health and feeling of achievement. Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for that comment, Maddie. Okay, so here are some examples of what our students have been doing in the past couple of years. This is an example of what you might see if you have a meeting with the fellow students and researchers and professors. So you can see a mix of professors and master's students and undergraduate students. And what we were doing here is we were planning a very big study a couple of years ago. This is what the study actually looks like. So we invited participants to come into the lab and we scanned their brains using something called FNIRS. And they did some cognitive tests on a computer. After that, we put them either on a treadmill or here or on a bike. And we measured their VO2 max, so their endurance capacity. And then we scanned their brains again. Jessie or Sophie, I believe one of you was actually a guinea pig on this study. Is that right?
Yeah, that was me. I did the program. I was a guinea pig last year, and I just found it really interesting because VO2 max tests, I think I've only done 1 or 2 VO2 max tests in my life. And it was just really interesting to see how I could react to things differently before and after exercise. And it was just very interesting because it made me start thinking about how maybe before I before I study, I should maybe go for a run because it actually makes me feel a lot more energized. And yeah, it was really interesting. And we also had to follow an exercise intervention where we had to follow a program that was prescribed by the research team. And that program also made me feel a lot stronger afterwards. So
very glad to hear that. Do you remember what your VO2 max was, Sophie? Do you want to share it?
I think before the intervention, I think it was about 35, which is not great. And I think after it must have been about 40 or 41. So.
Wow, that's massive improvement. Well, and if you're training for the marathon, you'll easily get up to 50 soon. So
yeah, hopefully.
That's really good going. Okay, well, perfect example of what our program is doing to our students. Okay, well, so this is some of the data that we got from that study. So you can see Sophie's brain here. Well, actually, this is everyone's brain merged together. It's not just Sophie. But what this is showing is that after exercise, specific regions of the brain that are relevant to specific tasks activates more after exercise compared to before exercise. So this is when Sophie was saying, you know, a bit of exercise makes me feel more alert and more focused. Well, we actually see that in the brain, which is, I think, is pretty cool. And what was very interesting is that overall in the study, and again, this is something to tell our friends, is that although everybody's brain became more active after exercise, there was a difference, and the people who were more fit improved more. So exercise is good for our brains. It makes us more focused, more alert. But if we are more fit, we benefit more from that effect. And we also saw a relationship with depression as well. So there were differences in the changes in brain activity in people who were depressed compared to people who were not depressed. And again, this plays into the message that exercise is important for us, for our mental well-being as much as our physical well-being. And if you're wondering, well, what am I supposed to do, and how much exercise should I be doing for my mental health? Well, this is a great example, again, from the study that Sophie was on. We compared the improvement in people's moods and feeling of focus and alertness before and after different types of exercise and different intensities. And what you see here, this box right here, this was 30 minutes of a good, intense cycling session. So what this is telling us is that any form of exercise is good for us. And you can see that, you know, all the numbers are positive, except for resting. Resting was negative. So resting is not great for us if we want to improve our mood. But any form of exercise is good. If we feel like doing a stronger session, that's even better. So 30 minutes of a good cycling session is what boosts our mood the most. So that's a message for our friends. There is, of course, lots of other types of research. This is called a biodex, and you can measure strength and power with it. We've got force plates that also measure power. And if the participants is 2 meters tall or more, we have to remove part of our ceiling because otherwise they break the ceiling. And here we have some research with children. We also go into schools and we work with children, and we look at how moving during lessons actually decreases obesity in children. So by getting children to stand up and walk around during a lesson, we actually do find a reduction in obesity. So it doesn't have to be exercise and sports. It can just be standing and walking around, and that's enough to have an effect. Jessie, you're connected somehow to this research project. Can you tell us what your experience has been working with children?
Yeah, so we've been going into primary schools in the UK that are part of, it's called active movement. It's basically get them moving around in the classroom a bit more to reduce their sedentary time. And then we've been testing their cognition. So do a couple of different tests looking at sustained attention, reaction times, that kind of thing. And at the moment it looks like, you know, more active the children are. They also complete questionnaires for us about how often, you know, they do sports after school, what they do during their break times and things. And at the moment it looks like the more active you are as a child, generally the better results you have in those form of cognition tests. So yeah, so it's pretty cool.
Thank you, Jessie. Yeah, we're starting to see a relationship between obesity and levels of physical activity and how well the kids perform on cognitive tests, which is quite striking, quite important. So I think what I find exciting about student research, and you may or may not disagree with me, Jessie and Sophie, but it's real world and impactful research. You're not just, you know, reading through something and writing a thesis. But you are involved, or you can be involved in research that is actually having an impact on the population. And you can, you know, speak to your family and speak to your friends and say, I've studied this and I know that this works or this doesn't. Okay. All right. So program overview. This is what you will be studying if you decide to select this program. Over the 3 years, you will have a series of sports-related modules, cardiovascular and respiratory function, exercise physiology, muscle strength and conditioning, performance optimization. So these are the modules that are mostly focused on sport, assessment and performance. You then have, as I mentioned earlier, you do study about injuries, how injuries happen, how to rehabilitate injuries. So you start in year one by learning about anatomy, how to interpret medical imaging, which is again something that you would not get on a sports science course. And then you go through learning about infection and inflammation. And then in your final year, you're taught by a physiotherapist on how to rehabilitate and assess injuries. You also get a series of modules that focus on the body, so the kidneys and the guts and the liver, nutrition, pharmacology. And these are your, I guess, your medical sciences modules that give you a very strong foundation in how the body works in health and in disease. Then you have a series of modules that are around medicine and psychology and the application of all of this knowledge, essentially. Jesse and Sophie, you'll notice that two of these you might not recognize. These are new modules that we're developing at the moment. So you will have a sports psychology module in year 2 and an exercise in neuroscience module, which is optional in year 3. And then you have, of course, your research project in year 3, and we do give you some skills in order to build up for that. There are some optional modules in year 2. So these are not mandatory, but you can select health economics and clinical trials if you're really interested in them, but they are optional. Can I ask Jesse and Sophie, is there a particular module that you enjoyed the most or you felt was more useful for your degree?
I really liked the exercise medicine module in year 3 because it was basically combining what we learned about in year 1 and year 2 about the clinical population and understanding how to just improve certain conditions, so like hypertension or decreasing the risk of type 2 diabetes by prescribing exercise. And during that module, we are learning a lot of different techniques and different ways and the benefits of different exercises. So for example, aerobic exercises, well, very obviously amazing for improving your cardiovascular fitness, whereas strength training might be very good for those who are within the older population because that helps them build lean muscle mass and therefore helps decrease the risk for a bunch of different fractures and sarcopenia. And it's just so interesting being able to look at different literature and research to understand how we could better provide care holistically to the populations, different populations.
Jesse, what about you?
I really enjoyed the muscle physiology, strength and conditioning in year 2. You start with that module, just doing a bit of an overview, and then you actually make a program for yourself and you follow it along the whole module. So that's pretty cool. You get to do like your own personalized program throughout the whole module, and it's quite tailored to athletes. So if you find that particularly interesting, that module is really good. And then I also did the health economics optional module in year 2, and I found that really interesting. It was all about how like we covered how they deal with like the NHS budget, where it goes, how it gets spent, and how generally money is spent in health and in population. So that was really interesting to learn how that all works. And yeah, that was pretty cool.
Well, thank you. They're 3 perfect examples of very different modules and very different focuses and how I guess students get a flavor of both. You get the clinical aspect and then you get the performance aspect and how to apply it. So, thank you both. That is great insights. Okay, so what will you know once you're out of here and you have a piece of paper that says, I got a degree from UCL? So while you study with us, you will work independently in the lab. Lots of your lab stuff and your lab work will be around, testing each other and body composition and exercise testing. But you do also work in with pipettes and microscopes, and you get a bit of the biochemistry aspect or cellular aspect. You will learn how to assess each other's injuries. So you'll learn how to look at a foot or look at a knee. And this is an example of what you could be doing once you're out of here. So this is one of our colleagues or former colleagues assessing what could be a pretty substantial brain injury on the pitch. So this is where you might end up once you're out of here. First aid related skills and what to do if a person gets injured or hurt. As Jessie said, you will learn to design strength and conditioning programs, how to make people stronger, but you also learn how to prescribe exercise to patients. If I have an elderly person with osteoporosis and lots of injuries, well, what type of exercise is good for them? And what can I do with them? What can't I do with them? Or if I have a person who had a heart attack, should they be exercising? At what intensity? What are the risk factors? And what can I do to help them? So you do learn all of that as well. Of course, you learn how to test performance in athletes. You get to test how strong they are and how good their endurance is, but you also learn how to apply those same concepts to clinical populations. And all of this, of course, you learn how to think critically. We're not just teaching you facts because you can go and get the facts on your own, but we want you to think and to solve problems and hopefully apply those once you graduate from here and become, high-flying professionals who will solve the problems of the world. You will learn how to conduct scientific research, like we've showed earlier. These are examples of student projects that can happen in the lab, and you do these pretty independently. We supervise you and we show you how to do things, but then you're in the lab with your participants and you get to spend time with them. How will you learn? There will be big lecture theaters. So you are part of a much larger group called the Integrated Medical Sciences, where there's about between 100 and 200 students, but you also do get the small group interactions. This is the ISCH where I am at the moment. And we will do small group teaching and posters and presentations. So you get both sides of the university experience. Lots of lab work, of course, and lots of interactive teaching and working together in groups. And you do get the opportunity to present academic posters. And so some of the assessments are posters, but you also get the opportunity to go to conferences. Now that COVID is over and conferences are starting again, these will start to happen again. Some of the assessments that we give, they're not all essays. You do get the opportunity to write videos and write blogs. So there is a bit of a creative element to some of the assessments. They're not just, sit down exams. You do get a bit of everything. And like I said earlier, there's an annual conference that the ICH runs. Unfortunately, I don't think Jessie or Sophie had the opportunity to attend because COVID stopped this, but this will start again and continue. So you get to join us at these events, or you do get some discounts to go to big conferences. We've covered that. And finally, this is a bit of an old picture, but we're quite proud in the sense that at UCL we teach, it's what we call research-led education. So we make sure that our students are part of what we do, part of the innovation and the development and exciting discoveries that we make as academics, which is not something you find in every university. Okay, so before I move on, Sophie or Jessie, do you have any comments on any types of assessments or things that you enjoyed or things you enjoyed less? Or any opportunities that you might have taken if you've gone to any of the conferences we've advertised this year?
Actually, for one of the slides, I think it was on testing athletes and their strength and just performance tests. We were given the opportunity to work with or have an internship day with AI Scout, where we tested different athletes from different groups in the Chelsea Football Club. And it was really cool because we learned how to use force plates properly, which was something we have previously learned in year 2 during the strength and conditioning exercise physiology module. And yeah, it was a really cool day out. And also, I think about a month ago, the professor who developed the Tabata program actually gave us a talk at the ISCH, and I attended it online. It was very interesting because I have tried Tabata workouts before, and it's amazing. All the opportunities are great.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Yeah, that talk was quite fun. It's nice to know that 4 minutes of exercise can actually have an impact on our health. It's quite good, isn't it? Okay, well, so to finish off, careers and opportunities. Again, you've got a piece of paper, you walk out of UCL, what do you do with your life? I suppose, if you're thinking that far ahead. This degree gives you, and one of its strengths is that it opens lots of doors. So if you are a person who absolutely loves physical activity and exercise in any form, whether it's, walking or hiking or sports performance, but you don't quite know where to go with your career, then this is the degree for you. Because you can end up in elite sports, you can work with athletes as a coaching specialist or an injury prevention specialist. You can work with patients as a physiologist. You can design training programs for specific groups of patients. So if you want to design programs to improve the life of people who have cancer and they're undergoing cancer treatment, or you want to help obese people try to drop their weights and keep their health. So those are some of the things that you can go into. Public health, of course, you can influence policies at governmental level. That's some of our colleagues do that as well. You can, of course, end up in academia, become a professor, but you can go into industry. So some of our former students will go and create a startup or work as part of a big company. For example, if you think that, Nike and all the gear that they create and all the shoes, somebody has to decide what that shoe needs to look like and how that influences the way in which we run. And a biomechanist is the type of person that would do that in Nike. So that is a person who has a sports science degree, or you can go and work in the supplement industry. And finally, you can do a vocational degree, which is what Sophie is doing. So do a master's degree in physiotherapy and then become a physiotherapist. Some of our former students have also gone into graduate medicine. So you can do this degree and then get a medical degree and become a sports doctor, if that's what you wanted to do. So there's lots and lots of options. So if you love sports, you love exercise, but you don't quite know what to do with your life, this is the degree. Remember, you will study lots of clinical aspects. So if it's pure sports science that you're interested in, it's just coaching or business, then it's not the degree so much. And this is where you will study. We've got the main UCL campus at the top. Top right here, we have the Royal Free Hospital in Hampstead, close to a beautiful park, beautiful part of London. And at the bottom, a few pictures of the ISEH, which is where we are at the moment. So we've got seminar rooms and the labs, and we're walking distance from the main campus. So we're right just behind the corner. Again, this is where I am right now, the ISEH, and we are a collaborative institute. What's exciting about this is that it's not just UCL in the building, but we've got the EIS, the British Olympic Association, the NHS, and we've got chief medical officers and athletes and coaches and physiotherapists who work in the building with us. So it's a very exciting environment to be a part of. As staff, we all work with multiple other industries, and in a sense that gives our students access to opportunities to work with these industries. So I've had some of my students ended up in jobs in some of the partner industries that I work with. And then you graduate. So hopefully this is what you will look 3 years after you start your degree with us. So just to close, why would you study SEMS and why would you study it here? Well, you build lots of different skills. You get a clinical background, you get transferable skills, you learn to do very exciting research that you might not do elsewhere. You do build a very strong professional background. A degree from UCL is very prestigious. The ISEH carries its own prestige and global reputation as well. And of course, you are in the center of London. And while we may not have massive football pitches right around the corner from us, being in the center of London gives you something different. It gives you access to opportunities that you would not get outside of London from a career perspective. So that's that. If you're passionate about exercise and health, and that's what you want to do the rest of your life, then this is the degree for you. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. That's Flaminia Ronca, that's me and my email. And if you have any generic questions about admissions and applications, then please send them to the general questions email. So I'll leave that up for another minute, and I will hand back to Sophie.
So we can have a Q&A session now. If anyone has any questions, you could just submit it through the Q&A function through Zoom. I'll leave it up for a few minutes just to make sure we all have some questions that we could answer.
So while we wait for questions to come in, I have a question for the two of you. What is one moment that you remember from the degree that was either exciting or interesting moments as part of your studies? Or not, could be a social part at UCL.
I think one of the most memorable moments, I guess, was probably the last day of term for second term in third year. So our last teaching day, basically. Everyone had decided that we would just go to Honest Burgers, which is right across from the ISEH, and we had dinner there. And we all decided that we might as well just go to the library after dinner to study a lot and just do our coursework, and also start up researching a little bit more into our dissertations. It was a really cool experience because it felt like we were true university students after being affected by COVID for the past 2 years. So yeah, that was really interesting. And another moment was probably Monday when we had our first in-person exam and everyone was just sitting outside the exam room, a little bit nervous, but it was a cool experience. We've just got a question. So it was from an anonymous attendee, but do we have to do an interview when we apply? I think for first year, for our class of 2023, we didn't have an interview, but I am not so sure at the moment.
The answer is no, you do not have to do an interview to apply. So all you do is you go through the standard process on UCAS applications, and you will submit a personal statement. My recommendation for the personal statement is focus on the skills that you have built and your interests and what you want to do, what you want to learn, or what you want to do professionally. So sometimes students might be part of a team and they might be very successful athletes on a team, and they'll talk about all the goals that they made on their rugby team. And that is a fantastic achievement, but don't make that the bulk of your statement. Your statement is about the skills that you've learned. So whether it's leadership or team building as part of that experience in the rugby team, for example, but then how does the academic side come in is what we really want to know. So why do you want to study sports rather than play sports?
I think there's another question. It is, can you be a chiropractor with this degree?
That is not something that we teach. I'm not sure. I believe to become a chiropractic practitioner, it's you don't need a university degree. It's a course, I think, that you do. So it's something that you could do in addition to a degree. There are degrees in osteopathy, I believe, that you can do that might be more relevant to just purely working with bones. But well, the answer is no, but you could do it separately in addition to the degree. Okay. All right. I think we've answered all the questions.
Well, thank you so much to all of our speakers. Well, we are out of time and we'll need to leave it for here today. But if you could provide us with your feedback about today's session by filling out our survey, which will display on your browser following the event, that would be great. And thank you all for your comments and questions, and thank you to our speakers for an excellent session. Have a great evening, everyone.